Welcome to the Connection Matters podcast. I'm your host, Leona Johnson. In this podcast, we explore the intricate weave of consciousness, empowerment, connection to the sacred, and cultural emergence. I believe that now, more than ever, we're being called to craft a new story, one of community, deep listening, creative potential, cultural repair, and an embodied understanding of the interconnected web of all things. Let's do the work together so that we can move forwards with authenticity and integrity, knowing that we're contributing to a healthy, regenerative culture for future generations. My mission with this podcast is to inspire and empower you to step into this vision for life. Each episode, I'll bring you thought-provoking conversations with leading voices in the field, but you'll also find solo episodes where I dive deep into my passion, connected self-leadership and everyday spirituality, giving you actionable tools to integrate into your daily life. Subscribe now on your favourite podcast platform if you haven't already, and if you enjoy the show, please share it with those who would appreciate it. It really helps when you do. You can also leave a review on Apple Podcasts to help others find us who might need that dose of hope and inspiration. Finally, to get notified straight into your inbox, feel free to sign up to the mailing list in the show notes below. This is also where I share weekly inspirational thoughts and any downloadable freebies that I talk about during the episode. My aim is to serve. I am so grateful that you are here. Hey, welcome back to Connection Matters podcast, everybody. Before I launch into this conversation, I just want to let everybody know that I've got a lovely, juicy Finding Your True North session coming up. So if you're interested in coming and working with me for a free session online, have a little look in the show notes below to sign up to that. Now, today I am here with Jo Bell, who is somebody who I met. We were on the same, we've been working with the same business coach. Shout out here to Pandora Paloma, who's amazing, working with heart-centered businesswomen and others. But we connected when we did a live session on your Facebook. You're really good at doing Facebook Lives. I'm slightly resistant to it. But I love, and you came in and did a session for the Connection Matters membership calls that people get to join whenever they work with me. And it was such a deep and rich and beautiful session. All of the people who were in the call, I gave lots of lovely feedback, and people messaged me afterwards just saying how much it really touched them. And so it felt really good to invite you here today, Jo, to speak more deeply. Would you like to share a little bit about who you are and what is your passion?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just love being part of your community. It's such a special space, and I can tell how many beautiful people are really here and really wanting to expand themselves and find themselves. So thank you for inviting me in again. I'm Jo. I'm Scottish. I live in Lisbon, and I'm a coach. I specifically work with women, but I do have content that is applicable for everyone. And I work with women to really help them to find their passion, their aliveness, and their expression. And I specialize in inner child and somatic work. So we go really deep on root cause and release from the body. And I know sometimes that can sound a little strange. So I'm also always open to talk about that. I think a lot of times we throw these words around as practitioners, and it can be quite tricky to understand. But essentially, it's all about finding embodied self-trust and feeling really good about who you are.
I love it. Aliveness and passion. Who doesn't want that?
That, and we're being so cut off from it, because we're trying to be everything to everyone, that we actually don't live in that way. It doesn't become a way of being.
Absolutely. And I think the fact that so what, so many questions from that. So what brought you into doing this work? How did it all begin? Because it's quite a kind of niche, isn't it? It's a specialist area of work, which I think probably everybody could benefit from. But
yeah, absolutely. Well, I used to be an English teacher, so I used to have a completely different life. And during that time, for since I was a kid, since I was 11 or 12 years old, probably a little younger, I had depression and anxiety. I didn't know what those things were, but I do now. Like looking back, I have my diaries. I was really, really hard on myself, said the most horrible things to myself. And so I got by, like I had a beautiful life in so many ways. I wrote a post about this on Instagram the other day because there's that 2016 trend. And I was like, 10 years ago, my life wasn't terrible. I had like beautiful things and people that love me and an incredible career, but I did not feel good inside. Like I felt like I was made of glass a lot of the time. And if somebody threw something at me, I would shatter. Like if they asked me one more question, I would just dissolve. And I lived like that for decades, for decades. And it manifested as an eating disorder, it manifested as depression. And then eventually I got to quite a severe point where I just didn't really know if my life was going to go on, which sounds dramatic, but I just want to be honest. I think that's really important. It was really hard. And um, I had been getting into self development. And so I was like, I understand. At this point, I was like, I understand my life. I go to yoga. Like, this shouldn't happen to me. This should, like, how does this happen to me? Like, I get it. Like, I take care of myself. But what was really under the surface was a little girl that was so desperate to be seen and to be loved and to be told that she didn't need to be anyone else. And so I started really getting into inner child work, and I did a first training and then I trained again and I specialized in it because inner child work really transformed my relationship with myself. And I really started to feel like whole.
Mm.
And I'd never experienced that before. Like I had this core belief that there was something wrong with me and I couldn't say it without crying. Like now there's no charge. I'm just like, yeah, this was the thing that I believed about myself, but I believed it so deeply because when we have a core belief about ourselves, our brain's been looking for evidence from that subconsciously since it formed, right? And so it felt so real and so true for me. And when I did this healing work, I was like, oh my goodness, everyone needs it. And how do people not know about it? And so that's how I kind of came into this world. And then I started working with somatics in the nervous system. And for me, that's the secret sauce. If you can get to the root and then move it from the body, life starts to really change.
Mm. So, how did you get from the place of just coping and
Mm.
living your life, which on the outside looked good, to the point where you realized that that wasn't normal or it wasn't the way that it needed to be?
Well, my story is a little extreme, and I say a lot. It doesn't need to get like this, but I had a breakdown. I had a proper breakdown. And I was like an achiever, like I worked in a school and I was like a really good teacher and I had so much pride in that. And I was like, and without even really knowing it, like I never wanted to be promoted as a teacher. I wasn't like, I didn't want to move up the ranks. I loved my job, but I unknowingly just kept on taking work on and taking work on and taking work on. I also had like a breakup that was really, really hard and I just refused to feel. I was just like, I'm just going to fill my life. And this all happens. And, I think it's really important to say this. It all happens subconsciously.
Mm.
It's not like I didn't think there was anything really wrong. Like, I didn't think that I was hurting myself or in any way, or I didn't think that I was sort of suppressing things. I didn't consciously think that. But I can see looking back that I just filled my time and I really refused to feel. And I call it a little bit like, the cupboard, the cupboard in your house where you put all the stuff you don't want to see.
Mm.
It was like that. I was like shoving stuff in the cupboard all the time. Like I was like, I don't want to deal with my anger. I don't want to deal with my sadness. I don't want to deal with my heartbreak. Like it's all just going to go over here and I'm going to plaster over it with the stuff. And so I never really felt, and this is why I'm so passionate about working with women now in their emotional bodies, because if we don't allow ourselves to really feel our feelings, then we don't have self-trust because we're not really in alignment with us as human beings. We're like trying to always put ourselves in a box, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I had this time in my life where I had this breakdown. I didn't really know what was going to happen. And I just knew something had to change. And the thing that changed for me initially was my self talk. I had a moment where I wrote myself a letter. I'll give you the short version of the story. If anyone's interested, there is a whole podcast on this. But the really short version of the story is I had a breakdown and I was already booked to go to New York on holiday. And I was signed off work and had all this guilt, like, oh, I can't go to a holiday. I go to holiday? No way. And my counselor was like, go on holiday. She's like, this is your medicine. And so I knew I would be fine in New York. Like, I love it. I love the city. And I knew I'd be distracted enough. And honestly, when I look back, I think I spent my entire 20s just distracted enough to not deal with things, right? But I knew I was so worried about myself, like really intuitively worried about when I came home and how I would feel. So I left a letter on my pillow, and that letter said, I don't need you to do anything. I don't need you to go to work. I don't need you to feel good. I just need you to stay here. And that was like the beginning of a relationship with myself that I had never had. And that relationship for me is the thing that makes everything else possible. Mm.
Wow. Gave me shivers just hearing that. Wow.
Mm.
Yeah, that's quite a touching, emotional. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, of course. I haven't actually shared that for ages. you know, and then I'm like, oh, I wonder if I've missed bits of the story. Interesting. Inner critic. Here we go.
Wow, I just need you to stay here.
Yeah, I still have that letter. It's in Scotland now, but I'd never spoken to myself before like that. I'd never really spoken to myself like I matter.
Mm.
You know?
I guess that whole idea of speaking to ourselves can, to people who haven't actually built that relationship, might sound a bit weird. So,
Yeah,
or
100%.
unusual, or tricky. What
Mm.
what can you say more about that?
Yeah, of course. So after all of this happened, I was in counseling and I was just having these moments of realization, and I was telling my counselor, and I'm lucky because I've always written. So I have these as diaries, and my dad always said, keep your diaries, you might want them. And I think he thought they were full of like, I went swimming today and or whatever the thing was. But I was writing in my diary from like, I have a diary from when I'm 10 years old, and I'm like, my friend who says that I need to lose weight to go to a party. And I can see how that narrative became a narrative of self hatred. So I'm in a very unique position because I got to see that, and I couldn't argue with what my younger self was saying. It's like there in black and white. That's what I'd written. And so what I came to realize is that our self talk is so informed by our conditioning and that it runs unchecked in our head. And so until we actually have beautiful processes to work with, there are things that you tell yourself every single day about who you are and what the world is. And that is your reality. That is just your reality. Like I was telling myself all of these horrible things about myself. And of course, I didn't feel good about myself, right? If you're always criticizing yourself and saying that you need to do better and saying that things aren't enough, and saying for me, it really manifested in my appearance, so harsh on my weight, so harsh on how I looked. And that was what I believed to be true because I kept on repeating it. And then I learned about neuroplasticity. And for anyone who doesn't know this, I'm sure that loads of people in the world do know about it, but our brains learn through repetition. So my brain, when I teach this, I teach it like there's like a highway in your brain that's self-criticism. Or this is how it was for me. And I know for a lot of the same women, for the women that I work with, it's very much like this, where your default is to criticize yourself. So your first thought is self-critical. And what happens is when that repeats and repeats and repeats, it becomes this pathway that's so big, it's like a highway, it's so easy to go down. And it's so easy to like just be your automatic response. You don't even know that you're doing it. And so when you change your self-talk and you become compassionate with yourself, it's like you start with a repetition, but it feels a bit icky and sticky. It feels a bit like, ooh, I don't know if I can talk to myself like this. And I liken it to like a path that's really overgrown with loads of brambles, and you're kind of like picking your way through. And eventually it starts to widen, and as it does, it becomes a lot more beautiful than the highway. And you start to be able to choose it and to walk down it freely. And so having those two things, like having this understanding of I can change my brain, I can change the way I talk to myself. And I remember having a moment where I was like, wow, I made myself feel really, really rubbish. And I didn't know I was doing it, but I did have a hand in my own suffering, you know, like that process of commitment to self criticism was one of the reasons why I suffered so deeply.
Mm.
And then when I was able to shift that, it was like everything changed. And I don't mean overnight. I don't believe in quick fixes. I don't really believe in magic bullets. I do believe that we can have these beautiful moments of enlightenment and awakening, like I have had them. But unless they're followed up with change,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to shift anything, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So did that answer your question? I feel like I went off on a tangent.
No, I love it. You know, I think it's such an important way of knowing ourselves. Connection, you know, connection to
Mm-hmm.
that voice within is something that we can build a relationship with, and so having all of that growth. I love the highway. I love the idea of
Mm.
picking my way through the brambled path, but then it becoming more and more clear. And I
Mm.
also love the idea that the highway might start growing over. The one
Yes.
that was negative
Yes.
start growing over the less often it gets used, and it gets reclaimed by the wild that doesn't actually
Yeah.
need us to be so self-critical. But I
Yeah.
guess, you know, one of my questions is why are, because is there anyone
Mhm.
who isn't self-critical?
I have
And
one friend.
no, really.
I have one, yeah, I have one friend who doesn't have an inner critic. She's the only person I've ever met. Um, but it makes sense, right? Because we're programmed for threat.
Mm-hmm.
We're beings that are programmed for threat. We come into the world and our brains are constantly looking for safety, approval, and control. And if we make ourselves the threat, then we can fix it.
Mm-hmm.
If I think there's something wrong with me and that's the threat, then I look for all the things that are wrong with me and I can start to fix them. I can become a perfectionist. I can lose the weight. I can make myself what someone else wants me to be. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is how our biology is. And it doesn't mean that we can't beat it, but we need to bring things into the light of our awareness. Tara Brach says that. I love that phrase. I stole that from her. She's a meditation teacher and I love her work.
Mm-hmm.
But
Say it again.
when we bring things into the light of our awareness.
Yes.
So if we don't know something's going on, we can't work with it.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't know that I'm telling myself all these things about myself, which I didn't, not really. You know, I would have related to I'm hard on myself,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't get the whole dialogue thing. Didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got it, I really got it. It was in the light of my awareness. And I love that phrase because the light is healing, right? When things are in the dark, they have so much power. Your inner critic has so much power when it's in the dark
Mm.
because you're repressing it. And then one of the first things I get people to do, I can't remember if I did it in the workshop that we did together, but is to write down everything it's saying.
Mm.
Because once you have it out, you're like, oh, this is what I'm telling myself. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is still what I choose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is an interesting exercise to really start to notice all the ways that we speak negatively, and you could say it's because we want to be safe, or it's important that we fit in,
Mm-hmm.
and so those voices are making sure that that happens, but there's a point at which those voices take over.
Yeah, and there's also a point in which we really, really outgrow what they were there for. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there was a point when I was a teenage girl that beating myself up about how I looked and trying to make myself thinner somehow served me. I don't like that, but that is society, right? That is the way that the world is. So it's not that I'm in alignment with that at all, but I can see how that just helps me to get through. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like we need to update our programming, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I love my inner critic so much because it wants to protect me. And it
Mm-hmm.
is a scared little child who's like, no, no, we have to do it like this. So you got to be like this, and you got to be smarter, and you got to be prettier, whatever the thing is it's saying to me. It just comes from this impulse of a scared child that wants to protect us. But when we can update our programming and be like, okay, I learned this because of this. I posted a thing the other day about diet culture, and it's more specific to that kind of world. But our conditioning, I was born in the 80s, and by like the early 2000s, the conditioning around women's bodies and the way that women who were actually very thin, and I don't really believe that fat is an insult. Also, I want to put that in this space because we don't have those conversations, but I won't make it too much about that. That's a bigger conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But women that were thin, like a size 8 or whatever in the UK, were still publicly humiliated for their bodies
Mm.
because that's how society is. And there's so many examples of that. Like that's a specific one that I can talk about because it was specific to me, but men have their own things, like we all have our own kind of conditioning where we've been told that we need to be a certain way. And so we internalize that voice so that we can fit in. And one of my favorite quotes ever is from Brene Brown. And she says, fitting in is about assessing a situation and deciding what we need to do to be to be safe in that situation. I think I'm butchering it a little bit, but something like that. But belonging is being ourselves. And I just love that. Like the second part, every time I say it, like my body relaxes. I'm like,
Mm.
oh,
Mm-hmm.
being myself. I think
Mm.
I've lost my train of thought, but feel free to pick it up for me.
Well, I guess one of the things that I was thinking in that while you were speaking then is, are there certain repeated things that you hear? Like, is there like a number of certain things where people are either um, the inner critic says this, and other people it's this, and other people it's this? Is there like a particular number
Yeah.
of set voices? What might they
Yeah.
be?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So a lot of people like to give their inner critic like a character. But what I would always ask as a coach is like, whose voice is it? Is it yours? And sometimes people are like, yeah, it's mine because it sounds so much like them because it's been running for so long. But when we unpick it a bit, they're like, oh no, that's my auntie, or that was my mom, or that was this person in my childhood. Right. And so when we have an idea about where those voices have come from, then the question is, do you want to keep it?
Mm.
Do you want to keep what you were told or not? And that's a genuine thing that we get to decide on. I have two inner critic voices. One is like my mom, and the other one is Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, which I find very entertaining. But it's this kind of like, why bother? Like nobody wants to hear what you have to say. Like nobody, it's like that kind of a voice. And so that can be helpful to kind of separate yourself because it's not all of you, but also it is you. So we don't want to reject those parts. And I see a lot of coaches come and say, just tell your inner critic to go away.
Mm-hmm.
That's not helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Your inner critic is a part of you. And if we don't, like in the long run, even though that might help for a day, in the long run, if we're rejecting parts of ourselves, we'll never feel whole.
Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of the voices, I think there are things that I see a lot in terms of the conditioning that we have as women, where people think really, really similar things. Like I work with a lot of women who are like incredibly professionally successful, and they all have the same insecurities about their jobs. They all like it's very, very interesting. Um, so we have our cultural conditioning,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have the voices that come from the way that we think work needs to be, the way that we think our bodies need to be, the way that we think our presentation needs to be. And then it's like once we understand like what is mine and what belongs to conditioning, then we can decide what we want to keep and what we don't. So that is a huge process that I go through with clients. And it takes time, but it is something that you can really, really get to, you know?
So what are the kind of things that they might be saying, like I'm not good enough, or I'm never going to be as good as someone else,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Or just like I'm not good enough to have this job. I'm not like everyone thinks I'm rubbish, like, like things like that. Like that
mm-hmm,
they would never say out loud to anyone else apart from probably me and in my coaching container. We all worry about what people think about us.
mm-hmm,
And that is like such a huge theme. We
mm,
all worry about, we have such a deep need for acceptance and for belonging, but also to really matter, you
mm-hmm,
know?
mm-hmm,
And so I would say that our inner critic gets really fierce around those things. Sometimes people will say, like, this is so silly, or you're so stupid, or that's kind of how they'll talk to themselves.
mm,
They'll say things like, nobody really wants to hear what you had to say. That was like what a stupid thing to say, you know?
mm,
And when we start to get that voice on the page, it can be bitter and it can feel quite shameful because you would never talk to anyone else like that, but you
mm-hmm,
talk to yourself in that way. And so, really being able to own that and be like, whoa, this is what's happening inside of me is pretty big and pretty deep. But the thing that makes it sort of unique to every individual is we all have core beliefs. So my core belief is there's something wrong with me. So anything that I would say to myself that would hit on that belief would be the thing that went deeper for me, you know?
mm.
Yeah.
Oof, yeah, there's a lot, isn't there? I think that
Mm.
feeling of not being enough, whether that's pretty enough or intelligent enough or hardworking enough or whoever
Yeah.
we're being, is something that is quite toxic in our society generally.
100%. Because and I think that's the piece, we've had the privilege of no internet days and internet days. And I think that's the piece that we see so perpetuated by social media is just like, what is enough when you're comparing yourself to everyone's highlight reel, when you're comparing yourself to everyone on a good day, when you're not really giving yourself a space to be human,
Mm,
you know?
mm-hmm,
And a lot of people as well, they have such inner criticism around rest. Like
mm,
rest is lazy. Rest means that they're, incapable, whatever. There's a lot of stories around rest as well. And so rethinking these things, and this
mm-hmm,
is, I know, a lot of the work that you do as well, with like connection to nature and getting back to simplicity and really being like deeply connected to your own voice.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That is so beautiful, but it's so resisted in culture because of the way that we're wired, you know?
Yeah. Is there a
Mm,
place for the inner critic? I mean, a lot of people would say that it's only because of their inner critic pushing them, their
yeah.
fear of being rejected by their parents who got them through
Hmm.
university, or their fear of
Hmm.
being rejected by their family that made them
Hmm.
get that good job and work hard enough. Is there a place
Hmm.
for it?
I love that question. I love because I get a lot of pushback. Especially I do some corporate work on this, and a lot of times people are like, "Oh, but I need my inner critic because my inner critic is the person that pushes me to get to where I am. So if I let that go, there's this fear of like I'm just going to give myself a free pass." And this comes back to self-trust,
Mm,
right? This comes back to like, do I really think that I have to motivate myself that way in order to be the person that I want to be? Do I really think that I have to say terrible things to myself every single day in order to be good at my job? I personally don't, you know? And again, there was a place for it. That's why it developed. There was a really important place for it in childhood, but it doesn't exist anymore in the same way. When we're children, we have no choice.
mm,
We don't have agency. We can't be like, take me out of this classroom and put me in another one because that person is mean to me. We can't do that. We can't be like, give me a different parent because my parent isn't showing up for me. We don't have that, right? And so 100%, there definitely was a place for it, but I would argue with conviction that if you rely on your inner critic to motivate you, you will always be in a cycle of never enoughness.
Mm.
And then it just comes down to, is that how you want to live? Because all of the research on self-compassion is that people who are self-compassionate are more resilient, they're better leaders, they are people who show up more effectively in the world. There's a huge, huge body of research around this. And I also know from myself and the hundreds and hundreds of women that I've worked with at this point, that they are more effective in their lives when they are kind to themselves. And they're also really essentially have more capacity for other people. Because when we're not compassionate to ourselves, we have very little capacity to be compassionate in a genuine way. We might look like we're showing up and being kind, but we don't have the same level of compassion and empathy for other people, and we can't hold it as much in our nervous systems because it doesn't exist for us, right?
Interesting, because there's a lot of people who I know would probably say that they do everything for everybody else
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
nothing for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how's that working out for them would be my question.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can do that from a wound. You can do that from I'm not enough. You can be over functioning, always giving. But what is the cost?
Mm-hmm.
Your aliveness, your joy, your purpose,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know? So what kind of version do other people really get of you? Because I know that in my world, the people that I love experience me completely differently because of the choices that I've made for myself, you know?
Mm-hmm. So if someone's hearing this and they are resonating, well, yeah, that's me. And maybe I know that I shouldn't be, but what do I do about it?
Take out the word should, first of all. So my banned words. Um, so what you can do about it, what you can choose for yourself, is to get really, really clear. This is a really quick way to do it, to sit down with yourself and just right now, today, what are the things that I'm telling myself about myself? You don't have to go too much back into the historical stuff. It's just like, what is that I'm telling myself right now? And I like to use supportive and unsupportive. So I would get a page and just be like, what are my unsupportive thoughts? And I would write them all down. And then I would take a deep, beautiful breath and be like, okay, so this is what's automatically running in my mind. Let's notice. Okay, whose voice is it? Is it mine? Is it my mom's? Is it an employer I had when I was 16? Like, whose voice is here? If I'm really honest. And do I want to keep it? But then I think, and this is where my work comes in, and your work probably does too, it's almost like learning a new language, because I never had that modeled to me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have anyone that was saying, of course you feel anxious. This is really hard. I'm so sorry it feels like this for you, you know? I didn't have that. I have very loving people. Don't get me wrong. Like, I have very loving people, but I just didn't have anyone saying those things in a way in which I could receive them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like learning a language that actually lands in your body. And it's really important that we don't start gaslighting ourselves, that we don't start saying things that don't land to ourselves. And I say this all the time in my teaching. It's like, if one of your beliefs that comes through in your inner critic is, nobody likes me at work, then to go to, I'm absolutely amazing at my job and everybody loves me, is just like, no, no. But to go to, I show up every day, I'm myself and I try my best. That's a different vibration, right? It's a different reality to operate from. And so it's finding these replacements for your self-talk that land in your body and aren't overblown, but feel good in your nervous system. Feel like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I use may I. If people really are resistant, it's like, may I see how much I'm trying? May I be there for myself? May I care about myself? And almost just putting that intention out can start to shift things. And I'm not saying that it's like an overnight thing. And I'm not saying I can give you a 1-page PDF and that's going to be it, because that's just not how this rolls.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a beautiful resource that would help with it to start with, but it's showing up for yourself consistently and really being there and being like in the deeper work that I do, it's reparenting yourself. Like, how do you want to be with yourself? And that is a question that feels so big, because it's like we never ask ourselves that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really a powerful process to take responsibility for both who we are being in the world, but who we are also being with ourselves. And until we do that, we're not leading. We're not in that connected self-leadership, which I would say brings a richer life, brings a life where we actually have choice and can actually choose how we're going to respond rather than reacting to everything that comes. And
Ah, and that is huge. It's so huge for your nervous system. If we're constantly in a reactive state, we're always in a heightened state in the nervous system. And whereas when we know that we're capable, we know that we trust ourselves. And for me personally, the biggest thing was knowing that I would not beat myself up if something went wrong. Like, I wouldn't have a business. I never would have left my job if I couldn't have been with myself when things failed. And that's the resilience piece, right? If you are in a 3-day spiral because you got something wrong, I don't really believe in wrong, but something went awry, then you've lost 3 days of time. Whereas if you can be like, okay, let's take a breath. And this is something that I've really worked on recently. And I know that we're both in this space, it's like, can I reorientate, but without going in on myself like that? That's where we get our lives back. And I think that we underestimate how much time we hand over to this unknowingly when we're not aware of it.
Yeah. And actually, the first step, as you said, isn't so massive. Asking yourself, what am I telling myself about this, is just so rich, because that's what brings the awareness. And then asking yourself, what are the unresourceful thoughts that I'm telling myself here, so that we can really see them for what they are, unresourceful and resourceful. Because that enables us to build that awareness and relationship, which helps us cultivate and make choices about the next step. I love your resource, and I'll link to it in the show notes for people who want to sign up. It's a beautiful way of just exploring this work from the beginning. But I sometimes think that it is the first step that actually starts to open up this world of self-awareness in such a way that you can have big aha moments on your own. You can have big aha moments through doing very simple things, because it isn't rocket science. It's about us choosing who we want to be in each moment. And
100%. Yeah, definitely.
how do you think that this work that you're doing, that I'm doing, that we're seeing, I mean, we're in in networks of people who are doing this deep, connective work, and a lot more people are choosing to get help around this area, because it's not taught in schools and it wasn't part of our culture in the 80s and 90s and wherever it is that people grew up. How are you? So we've got both that level of self-awareness growing in the field. More people are bringing this work to the forefront because we feel the power of it and we know it's needed. And then at the same time, we've got this crazy disconnected culture that is driving people to despair for all the practical reasons, and also a massive amount of fear and lack of control over what's happening, and that's in our small worlds and our big worlds. Just bringing what we're talking about into that context How do you see this helping? And or what is going on in the field, in this kind of consciousness, field of consciousness and awareness?
Yeah, I think it's really hard, like sometimes for people who are not coaches or haven't been in the world of self-development, and they come in and they start to have these breakthroughs. And I talk a lot talk a lot sort of privately with friends about my fears around the coaching industry being so unregulated, and there are so many people now just chat GPTing their content and talking about things they don't actually know and haven't actually embodied. And I think that I see the work that I do and that I know that other people do. Like this, I was talking to you about, I'm going out to Austin to support my mentors on something. I like the antidote to it, because when we are seen in the work that I think we both do, I don't want to speak for your programs because I'm not sure 100% what's involved. So I'll talk about me and then you can talk about you. But the containers that I hold, women are really, really seen in their truth. And the impact of coming in and telling someone, hey, I don't have this. I don't got it. Like, I haven't got this all figured out. And actually, I'm ashamed about this thing that happened 10 years ago. I've never told anyone. Like the connection that that brings, the women in my world and what I've experienced is that I have deeper connection with people in these spaces because we're able to really go where it's not the Instagram version, it's not the fluffy version. It is like, this is what is true. And this is what has happened in my past. And this is where I am. And the more that I think we can create spaces where people are really seen and held in their truth in a very safe way, and that's containment as a practitioner. It's really important that people feel safe, that they understand that they can be seen. That is where we start to see change in our world. Because once you have had the embodied experience of telling somebody something that you've been ashamed of or that you've been scared about, and it's received with love, that's where we get the reprogramming. That's where we get the experience of like, oh, maybe I don't have to believe that thing anymore. Maybe it's safer to open up to my partner because this person could see it and hold me in it. And so I think these containers are so important in terms of their ability to deeply connect us and to help us to truly express ourselves. And that, for me, is where I see the biggest difference in women, because our voices, and this is not just now, this is generational, our voices have been so dim and shrunk and contorted. And so when we actually enable ourselves to speak, it is so huge. It's so huge. And also like the piece around the body, like we hold so much in our body because we're in so much fear of the things that happened in our early life that hurt so much happening again. And so when we have, like my mentor says that the biggest gift you can give another human is a regulated nervous system. I'm like, yeah, because if you can hold somebody and what they're going through, like if I can hold someone else's fear around what's happening right now in the world and not escalate it and be with it and not dismiss it, but not escalate it, it's the escalation. And that's what I see in culture. That's why I specifically am very, 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 what is the word? It's gone out of my head, but I limit my news intake. I'm very conscious of what I put into my consumption. I'm very conscious of the people in my world that I spend time with. I just had a conversation with a friend about something that she put in a chat because it specifically wasn't that helpful for me. Like I don't need to re-traumatize myself. And I think that a lot of us are in spaces where really terrible things are happening in the world. And then we get hooked on the response of like watching them again and again, but actually that's not being resourced. Go back to your word about being resourced. I'm resourced when I can go outside and my nervous system is calm and I'm nice to the person in the shop that might have had a really, really bad day, And that's a micro moment that actually matters. But we think it needs to be so much bigger than that a lot of the time. We think it needs to be bigger. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, Absolutely. I mean, it's a big thing, isn't it? It's not.
Yeah.
There isn't an easy answer to how to be in these times, because these
No.
times aren't the times that we expected to be in. You know, that as a child you long to grow up in, and
Hmm.
I think that we have a programming that comes in with us that tells us that we should be in community, that there should be elders, that we should and could be safe,
Hmm.
that the world around us should be an inherently good place, and that when things go on, there'll be people there to support. And actually, when that's not been your experience, your lived experience in the life that you've lived in, and that from left, right, and centre, we're hearing all sorts of terrible stories about the culture that we live in right
Yeah.
now, that we can
Yeah.
hardly believe is the culture that we, what should I say, were led to believe we were part of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No matter how long those of us who have been in the awake world of knowing that there's more going on behind the scenes than what was being shown, everything now is out in the open. I I guess I'm saying this now because you and I had a short chat before the podcast, and we
Mm.
were saying how last year, particularly, was the year where so many people had a big year. And actually,
Yeah.
I think globally, it it things just seem to come open, out and
Yeah.
open, in the open,
Yeah.
things that cannot be unseen, ways that the world operates that cannot be
Yeah.
unknown now. No matter how
Yeah.
much, whitewashing happens, there are things that are going on in the global situation that are scary, and we can choose where we put our attention, and we can
Mm-hmm.
choose to not get really drawn into terrible things that are going on, whilst
Mm-hmm.
of course doing what we can. And the work that we really need to be doing is with ourselves, so that we can actually be the parents that we want to be, or the friends or the people in our community that we want to be. But it's a lot, isn't it? It's a lot
Yeah.
that we are.
Yeah.
These times, I think, are just
100%.
really, really big times to be living in.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I think this is where self-compassion is even more important, and because nobody's got a roadmap.
Mm,
Nobody knows. There is no right way. And so then it's like, what do you choose? And being kind and compassionate to yourself is such a huge thing, because we are going to not get it how we want it to be. I'm trying not to use the word right, you
mm-hmm,
know? But it's like we're all human and we're all in it together. And just to speak to your part about the connection piece, it's so huge because we need each other to co-regulate. It's a little bit like there's people in my life that I don't phone when I'm having something hard happen,
mm,
because I know it will escalate it,
mm-hmm,
right? And not because they're terrible people, just because they're wired to be in it with me and to make it bigger. And
mm,
actually, that's not helpful. What I really need is steadiness and groundedness. And I think as leaders, this is kind of like a bigger conversation that you and I have, but like people need leaders that are really grounded
mm,
and really able to hold all of that without invalidating it, but also, yeah, that's hard.
mm-hmm,
And then there's the piece around, and now what do you choose?
mm,
And now who are you?
mm-hmm,
And now how are you showing up? And now what support do you want? And now where are you going? And I think just being kind and compassionate to yourself is just the biggest thing. The
mm.
biggest thing.
Well, I always,
Because,
yeah.
yeah, no, go for it.
Sorry. No, I always say, to people that it's just like putting your oxygen mask on the plane, isn't it? If you
100%.
if the plane is going down and you are not able to be one of the people who are supporting the ones that you love and care about, because you're already not resourced, then
Yeah.
then there's a problem. And so is the question around worthiness, and it is the question around, I love your Eeyore example of like, well, what's the point? What's the point? What's even the point? And for me, I think all of these big questions really speak to actually what is the point? The point, what is the point for you? Because if you're not connected to what is the point for you, and finding purpose and finding meaning in those small acts of connection and love and generosity and humor and appreciation of the beauty of life, and finding those kind of micro moments that actually help us remember that we are part of something, that we have, and that the way we choose to look and see and be really matters.
It really does. Yeah, it really does.
It can actually change the world that we see around us.
Yeah, 100%. And there's just a couple of things that were dropping in for me when you were speaking. You were asking me before about like the things that people commonly experience. And just like a tiny one that I think so many people can relate to is like when we're canceling plans, this is like a small thing. And I don't want to talk about the bigger thing. I know so many people that are like, oh, I can't cancel plans. Or if they do, they'll over justify, right? And then what we don't realize when we do that is that we're not fully choosing ourselves, but then we're putting our like justification on the other person. So the other person then has to sit with our discomfort around, oh, maybe like I blah, 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 and all whatever we're saying in our message, instead of like, I can't make tonight. Let's catch up another time. And so there's like a cleanness that can come with this kind of decision making and choice for yourself that really does mean that other people truly benefit from your ability to be in self leadership and to not have to qualify and to not have to justify. Like, this is so big for women that I work with, and it just dropped in for me around that. We get to choose ourselves, and we get to choose our lives, and we get to choose who we let in, and we get to choose what is a no for us. But so often it's just connected to such like a deeper story of who we need to be or who we needed to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the piece that you were talking about, like with the bigger picture, is like, if I don't have any of that happening in my mind, if I'm not like sending a 4-minute voice note qualifying why I can't make someone's party, then I can be having my feet on the earth. Then I can be, oh my God, the sky is so beautiful. Then my body can be so much more open to the magic that is here in our daily life. And like, we literally don't get to do this again. We're already the age that we are. Things have already played out how they have. And every day of your life is precious. Every day is worth fighting for. Every day is worth being present, and every day is sacred. And I don't say that for anyone to feel bad at all, but it is like an understanding of the gravity of what you do with your internal mind. Like it has a huge impact. I'm just reading The Choice. Have you read it, by Edith Edgar?
No.
The book about, she was in the Holocaust. She survived Auschwitz. Highly recommend.
Wow.
But and she talks about how essentially it's prisoner paradise, and we always have that choice of what we put in our mind or what we allow to be there. But I think the deeper thing that often gets missed in that conversation is, and the reason that we don't always have access to the voice that we want to have access to, is because the deeper patterns and the wounding is playing out underneath that, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I hear the depth in all of that, Jo. Thank you. So for someone who's interested in doing something about this and actually taking action or finding out more about you and the work that you do, what are you working on right now? What are you excited about, and how can people connect with you?
Yeah, I love that question. So I am I think my headphones have just gone. Hold on.
Well, I love all that, Jo. So thank you. So for someone who is interested in doing something about all of this and who is looking to take action and understand themselves from the perspective of self-love, self-talk, and the inner child work that you do, how can they find out more? What are you working on? What are you passionate about right now?
Yeah, I love that question. So I am passionate about everything that I do, and I have beautiful free resources that we mentioned sort of earlier, including a script book where you can really start to work with your self-talk in a really meaningful way that's totally free and anyone can access. Even though I work with women, if you're a man, you're more than welcome to download it and use it. And for people who are really ready to be a stand for themselves and choose themselves, I have two incredible opportunities. I have a signature program called Rise, which is all about finding embodied expression and fierce self-trust, like really feeling good in your skin, maybe for the first time ever, and feeling like the confident, amazing woman that you might sort of know is there, but you don't feel like all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then for women who are really ready for the highest level of depth and accountability and really to go into these processes, I have my one-to-one containers, which is the most intimate and transformative high touch work that I do.
Well, that would be a juicy experience, I know for sure. Just being part of your workshop when you ran it in the Connection Matters membership, and yeah, I can only imagine how powerful it is. And I'm really grateful that you're bringing this work to the world, and to know you and to know that we are peers and allies in bringing more self-connection to the world, and with that creating ripples out into our communities and beyond. And I really believe that it is this level of depth, integrity, authenticity, and personal responsibility that is going to bring about a change.
Yeah, 100%, because we can all make an impact. But when we are in that spiral of self-doubt, that doesn't feel real, right? So the more of us that step into like really being just who we are and getting those layers away of doubt, and being a stand for what we're a stand for. I know you have so many amazing people in your community, because the type of leader and sort of teacher that you are, that really feel that, that they want to be people that are making a difference. And that's hard when you doubt yourself. It's really hard. So see my little doggy's head. Dog has been sleeping on my lap this entire time, and she's just, for anyone who's listening, decided at the last minute to just pop up and say hi.
Oh, well, hello there, little doggy. And thank you so much, Jo. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Do look in the show notes for all of the links of the things that we've named here today. Look there also for the link to sign up to Finding Your True North, which is the free masterclass that I'll be running in a few weeks' time, and for Jo's free downloadable resource, which I fully recommend. With that being said, everybody have a beautiful day, and see you or speak to you next week. Thank you very much, Jo.
You're welcome.
Thanks for tuning in to Connection Matters podcast. I hope today's episode inspired and empowered you to deepen your connection to yourself, others, and the world around you. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to subscribe, share it with those who might benefit, and leave a review. It really helps others to discover the podcast. You can also join our mailing list to stay updated with new episodes, inspiring thoughts, and free resources designed to support your journey. Together, we can build a more connected, compassionate world, one conversation at a time. Until next time, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep creating the future that you want to live in. Go well, beautiful human.